Hi, I'm Kevin Scott with 100 Huntley Street, and today we are joined by Peter Greer of Hope International. Peter, it is so great to be with you today.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm just fascinated by the work that you do and the way you make an impact around the world. Tell us a little bit about Hope International, about the mission, and how you guys are confronting needs and solving issues around the world.
It's a little bit perhaps of a different story in that Hope International is actually an organization that was founded out of a failed charity experiment. And after the fall of the Soviet Union, there was a church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania that wanted to respond. And so they sent over food and goods and supplies, and that was the way that they were trying to help. But after doing this for several years, the Pastor Petrenko in Zaporozhye, Ukraine, eventually said, "Your help isn't really helping us." And imagine, here's the church that had given generously, had gone, had served, and the person that they're trying to serve says, "Your help isn't really helping." And turns out they discovered what a lot of us discover at some point, is that charity is so good and so needed in the wake of a disaster. But as progress happens, there has to become a point where you transition from just charity to longer term, more sustainable help. And so that's really how Hope International was founded, and then discovered this tool called microenterprise development, helping people start their own small businesses as a way of helping themselves provide for their families.
Well, it's an interesting history. Now, you've been with Hope International for about 10 years now?
That's correct.
Okay. And how do you do micro enterprise? How do you get funds from places here to places around the world and identify people in need?
Yeah, the amazing thing is whatever notion you might have of people in poverty, that they might not want to work or they might not have the capacity to work, that has not been our experience at all. The simple reality is people around the world do not want their kids to be someone else's charity case. Moms and dads around the world, when you ask them what they want, the number one thing that they will respond, in my experience, is I simply want a job. I want an opportunity to provide for my family. And then you ask the question, well, if there aren't jobs in those places, how do you help them create jobs? And that's really the Hope International model. So it's a model of business coaching, training, where you walk alongside people. It's a community-based model where people are learning together, almost becoming a board of advisors for each other. And then everyone has the opportunity to start saving money. If you don't save when you earn $1, you're not going to be saving when you earn $10,000. And then we also provide small loans to individuals so that they can work their way out of poverty. And the thing about Hope, too, is we are committed to doing excellent work in how we address physical poverty. But beyond that, we really believe that there's more to life than just what we have in our pocket and in our wallet. And so we really want to address the spiritual poverty as well. And we do that through partnerships with local churches. We do it in a methodology that goes beyond just providing business coaching and deals with all of life, and ultimately points people to the hope that's found in Jesus Christ as well.
Really, really cool. Can you tell me a story? Can you give me an example of someone that you've met or someone that's been impacted by the work you're doing?
So I just returned from Burundi and Malawi, two countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's one of the parts of my job that I enjoy the most is getting to actually meet the families, because they really are incredible entrepreneurs around the world. And so there's one woman, Deanna, who had this dream. She wanted to provide for family, and the way that she was doing it was just little by little sewing. That was what she was doing, so sewing. And she knew that if she could get $100, that would enable her productivity to just explode. Instead of doing it by hand, what if she had a sewing machine? But the problem is that the sewing machine cost $100, and she only had a small amount of money and could never save up. So Hope International came in this part of Burundi, got her in a group. They started saving with each other, and eventually was able to access the amount of money to buy a sewing machine. And when I was with her, it just was incredible because, I mean, she wasn't even going to stop to talk to us. I mean, she was still working as we were asking her questions. And one of the questions that we asked her was, how long would it have taken you to save up so that you could have bought this sewing machine? And she just, paused momentarily and said, I never could have done this. And imagine, I never could have done this. And yet it has changed her life. Now her kids are in school. Now there's hope and optimism for the future. And the best thing is it wasn't a gift. She knew that she has done this, and she has provided then the opportunity for other people to start small businesses. And again, just seeing this beautiful way of actually addressing the root cause of poverty and at the same time allowing relationships to be built where, again, the meaningful conversations can happen as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. So Peter, here's the interesting thing to me. You guys are very focused on doing what you do well, which is this micro enterprise, providing these small loans. It seems like, especially in the world of charity or nonprofit or churches, it's easy to get off base sometime. And you've written a book called Mission Drift. Tell me how you began to study this, and tell me a little bit about the experience of how you got there.
So one of the moments in my life that I hope I never forget was meeting an individual who we were able to work with. My wife and I were living in Rwanda and helped an individual start a small business. His business was flourishing, and then I visited his home, and it was a picture of poverty. And then I went back a little bit later, and there still was no life change that I saw at all. And it turns out he was spending his increased profit on alcohol addiction, on gambling, on prostitution. And I thought, that's not what I want to give my life to. And then you compare that story with individuals that, yes, have business success, but they also have something happen in their heart. And again, I just believe the transformation that comes from the gospel of Jesus Christ is incredible. And so that's really what I said. I want to make sure I don't just offer a loaf of bread. I want to make sure we also are in a meaningful way offering the opportunity to know the bread of life.
Yeah.
And so as we did that, we recognized that the natural path that many organizations follow is to professionalize, is to grow, but to slowly move away from their founding commitments and their founding passions. And we have seen this time and time again, that the passions of the first generation become the preferences of the second generation, and they become irrelevant to the third generation.
Hey, I want you to say that again. The passions of the first generation become the preferences of the second generation, and they become irrelevant in the third generation.
That's correct.
So organizations who start with this goal or this dream and this focus literally begin to move away from what they were originally founded to do.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we wanted internally to ask this question and simply say, what can we do today to make sure that is not the path that we follow at Hope International? And so really it was a research project. We ended up spending 2 years talking with organizations that had remained mission true, found an incredible group of then stories, and really tried to look at the contrasting stories, organizations that kind of went off mission, and those organizations that have truly stayed the course and remained mission true, and asked the question, what can we learn from them? And then simply, what can we do to make sure that we stay on mission?
Okay, and the book is written for leaders and charities and churches, but I'm guessing any individual that has a goal or a focus could benefit from this book and this topic of staying true to your mission.
Yeah, it was interesting. One of the early people that read it said, Peter, this is almost like a marriage book, because it's if you stop paying attention to the small things, eventually you're going to go off mission. So there certainly is a lot of application, but you're right. The target audience are people that support organizations, people that care for organizations, people that lead organizations, so that they can start to understand what the small decisions, when we make small decisions today, they will be compounded by time, and oftentimes they will lead you to a place that you might not want to go.
Wow. All right, Peter, if you had one piece of advice to give to leaders, what would you tell them?
I guess related to mission drift is the first thing is believe that drift happens. Having an organization that is founded with an incredible story, having an organization that today is having an incredible impact, all of those are insufficient safeguards to prevent drift from happening. So the first thing is believe drift happens, and then really simply, what are the small things that we can do to take steps again? And that has to do with funding, it has to do with hiring, it has to do with culture, it has to do with your board, it has to do with what you celebrate. There are so many different pieces that then, if you believe that drift happens, you can actively work to, again, just row in another direction and not allow the drift to happen.
Yeah. I think knowing your heart for that and knowing your heart for staying on mission reinforces what Hope International is doing. And I think it makes people feel good about what they're giving to, that they're not going to give to something where a mission changes and it doesn't line up with their values as much anymore. So how can someone sitting here in North America that's watching this program, how can they get involved with Hope International?
Yeah, so our website is hopeinternational.org, and on the top tab, there's one of the tabs that says Get Involved, and under Get Involved, there are opportunities to join us in prayer. There are opportunities to experience the work that we do firsthand, and there are opportunities to, again, provide the financial partnership as well with us. So average loan around the world is a couple $100s, and that amount of money would enable a family to begin that journey of working their way out of poverty, having their dignity restored, and seeing lasting change.
Wow, so it's really not it's not difficult for somebody to get involved. There's no real obstacles. They could come today and partner with what you're doing and making a difference around the world.
And just coming from Burundi and Malawi, it's not always possible to connect people as much as we'd like, but I could tell you firsthand, lives are being changed in an incredible way. Around the world, we're serving almost 700,000 families right now. And again, it started from one church in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, connecting with a small church in Zaporozhye, Ukraine, and now just absolutely thrilled to hear story after story of lives that truly are being changed.
Well, Peter, we're thankful for the work you're doing. We will continue to be praying for it and find opportunities to partner with you, and especially with your book, Mission Drift, that's going to help leaders of other organizations continue to make better impact. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.